This painting is somewhat of a mystery. We don't know who he is, who he was painted by, or where he is from. All we've got is the artist's clues on the canvas. At first glance, it's a striking oil painting of a well-dressed young man, probably in his late 20s or early 30s, sitting in a formal pose, looking confidently at the viewer, but there's much more going on here than just a handsome face. From the details of the clothing, the grooming and the painting style, we can date this portrait to around 1835 to 1845. That's the early Victorian period, though the look still carries some of that late Regency flair. Now, looking under UV light, we can see some areas of overpaint here. There's a huge section on his forehead. There must have been some kind of major impact there. We've got overpaint in the background on that top left corner too. The rest of the varnish is fluorescing green, so there is something that can be removed here as well. The rest of his face looks good though. This is that major impact on that area of retouching. Anything new shines up darker. And then we've also got this ghosting around the top of his hair as well, where it looks like something's been altered, like the shape of his head maybe, or his hair. By his hand, there's another section of overpaint. That reddy yellow glow is all overpaint, as well as that black to the left. So there may well be another impact there as well. And then on the rear of the canvas, we can see all these patches. Unfortunately, the painting has been crudely cut from its original canvas, tacked onto this fairly modern stretcher, the wrong way around, I might add. And then there's these very rough patches added. You can see here that it's just been stapled to death along the stretcher edge there. So somebody's obviously removed it from its original frame and stretcher just to get a sale or just to make a sale. As you can see, there's loads to do on this portrait. If you've been following the channel long enough, you know that I'm obsessed with portraits, and how I became a restorer was my fascination with portrait painting. And I've had that itch to get back involved with portrait painting recently. And one of the ways I've been looking to do that is with Craftsy, which is today's sponsor of the video. Craftsy is an online resource for all things creative. So there's thousands of classes on drawing, painting, crocheting, knitting, baking, whatever it is you're interested in or have the inclination to learn more of, Craftsy's got a class or a resource for you. I've been looking at this great class by Nanette Fleur. It's classic children's portraits, but it goes through the whole process from picking your subject, choosing the colour note, the line drawing, blocking in, and the bit that I liked the best was where she's just using one tone and then revealing the portrait underneath. As a member, you'll have access to Crafty's live streaming tutorials where expert instructors share their tips, answer questions and engage with the Craftsy community in real time. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the video description will get a full year of premium membership to Craftsy for only $1.49, valid for new members only. So if there's something that you want to have a go at or something that you're inspired to try, head over to Craftsy now. There's so many different things you could get involved in. So if there's something that you've always wanted to try or felt intimidated to try, have a look at Craftsy. I'm sure there'll be a class on there that helps you back on your creative journey. Okay guys, let's get back to our portrait and see what needs to be done. So the first thing that I want to do is remove it from the frame and have a look at that tacking edge and see what kind of condition it's in. Now this frame has one of my least favourite fixing methods, which is these Z-clips. They're extremely sharp and poingy, and invariably I always end up cutting myself or stabbing myself with them. The only ones I don't like as much as these are those little triangular ones that get pushed into pictures as well. So once this has been removed, I can have a look at that tacking edge and decide what further action needs to be taken. So let's just get that horrible frame out of the way. Here he is. In there. So this is the tacking edge, and there are hundreds of staples all the way across, quite excessive, but you can see that the staples just shot straight through the canvas and it's not even holding in place. They've kind of shot through and just separated the canvas, and that's probably because the canvas is dry and old and a bit brittle, but somebody's just kept going and going with all those staples. So I'm going to have to find a way to remove those and take that canvas off the stretcher. I really like this portrait. I think it's really well painted. Now, if you look at his hairstyle and grooming, he's clean shaven apart from full but tidy sideburns and what we'd call mutton chops. His hair is parted at the side and slicked and carefully shaped, the image of respectability. At the time, this kind of grooming projected intellect and self-control and status, which were all very early Victorian ideals. With all those staples removed, I can take the stretcher off and give the back of the canvas a clean. There's the usual dirt and dust and grime build up here. These patches, they're hardly tacked on at all, really. It's some kind of glue. It's left a very dark grey residue, but they do remove fairly easily. So I'm just going to take these off, and then I'm going to clean off some of that residue just to kind of tidy the back of that canvas up. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 impacts here, the largest being on the right hand side. But I'm just using a little bit of solvent. This is going to take off that glue, and then it can be nice and tidy on the back before I get ready for the next process. So what I'm going to do with this painting is going to apply a new lining fabric to the back. I'm going to use a nice piece of Belgian linen. There's quite a lot of impacts on this painting. So this one alone on the right hand side is about 5 inches long. And then there's the 1, 2, 3 other impacts there and the one in the bottom corner. So rather than repatch the canvas again, we're going to reline it. But before I do that, I just want to apply a little bit of moisture to the canvas to relax it, get those tacking edges flat, and get it ready for the next stage. So to do this, I put a sheet of Melanex on the bench, apply some blotting paper over the top, which I'm just going to gently dampen and moisturize. So just use a spray bottle here with some deionized water. And then I'm just going to place him on top. And I'm just going to gently push down all those tacking edges just to get him nice and flat. And then once he's on there, I'm going to create another envelope with some Melanex and apply a little bit of pressure. So it's all very gentle. I'm not looking to get him completely flat at this stage. I'm just looking to soften those edges so it'll make it easier for the next process. The painting's going to have a new stretcher. So I've ordered a custom stretcher. It's much better quality than the one that was on before. It's better quality wood. It's thicker and it's going to have a little bit more strength to it than the stretcher that it was on originally. Now, the client had watched one of my previous restorations, if you remember, the one of Antoine Hamilton, and in that we toned down the stretcher to give it a little bit of age. So they've asked for the same treatment here. So I'm just applying a little bit of a mahogany stain and a wax polish just to give that stretcher a little bit of age. There is a whole science behind the aging of wood, and I have touched on this before, and you can sort of get an age of a painting from the colour of the stretcher bars at the back as well. There's quite a few resources available on that. So the painting has been under here for a couple of hours. I did switch out the blotting paper as well at one point just to draw some of that moisture away. And you can see those tacking edges now have relaxed nicely. And here's that tear on that top corner. You can see now with the patch off, you can see how big that is. And as I say, I'm not looking to get it completely flat at this stage. I'm just looking to relax it so that I can apply it to the Belgian linen for the lining fabric. So I'm just going to join the stretcher together here now and get everything ready for the next process. Always good to measure corner to corner to make sure you're entirely square. So the next thing I'm going to do is reline this canvas. It's going to have a new piece of Belgian linen applied to the back, and it'll go on the vacuum table where it'll be adhered using a hot melt adhesive. So the reason I'm doing this is because this impact is over 5 inches long. It's quite big. So to have a large patch on there, you run the risk of the patch coming forward off to the front of the canvas as an impression. And then there are all these other multiple impacts as well. So it would look like a patchwork quilt like it did. And over time, the patches just force their way through from the front of the painting and become visible. So I'm going to use a hot melt adhesive, which is a conservation grade adhesive. And I'm going to apply a brand new piece of Belgian linen to the back of this canvas. Now this will secure all those cracks and tears and form a really nice support for the painting for the next 200 years. So My vacuum table will apply a little bit of heat to that adhesive. The vacuum will flatten that together and form a really nice bond for the painting. So you'll have seen this before. I've still not bought a new latex blanket. I am going to treat myself at some point. So it takes about an hour or so for the table to get up to temperature. And you can see here now that the adhesive has melted and it has attached that canvas to the linen. It's always nice to get the painting to this stage because you are really starting to put it back together. It's attached really nicely to that linen. It's beautifully flat. Those tears and impacts have flattened out nicely as well. It's got a really good bond. I'm very pleased with how that's turned out. So the next thing to do will be to clean this canvas. It'll be to clean any residue from the surface and start looking at removing that varnish. Now, when the client first brought the painting, I've done a number of tests, so I know which solution will work on this painting already. And you can see my small test window in his shirt there. So just underneath his brooch there, you can see a little small window, and that's where I'm going to start. So the white pigments are the strongest pigments, so I'm going to start there. And then if I do need to make any alterations to my solution, I can do that knowing that I've not tested it on a weaker pigment like any of the browns or ochres in the background. So this is the discoloured varnish that's removing, and a bit of a dirt layer as well. But you can see straight away the difference there. That white is shining through. So even though it's not as dramatic as some portraits or some paintings where it's very, very discoloured, like the John Opie we had last time, you can see that it is discolouring this painting, and that by removing it, we're going to make the whole picture a lot brighter. So the gentleman has on a dark tail coat, which is probably wool, with wide lapels and a tightly nipped waist, which was very fashionable formal wear in the 1830s and 40s. Beneath that, he's got his burgundy waistcoat, which is richly patterned, maybe damask or brocade. It's cut high on the chest, as was the style at the time, and he's got his crisp white shirt with a high collar. And he's paired this with a narrow black cravat tied neatly under the chin, secured with a jewelled pin, which would possibly be amber or garnet. Now, this is all very fashionable and very intentional, and even his trousers are quite telling with that striped, smart, modern look for the time when they were favoured over breeches. I've mentioned his hair already. With his mutton chops and clean shaven. So he has got this very more modern look coming out of that Regency period. It's almost got that Beau Brummel Brutus hairstyle as well. If you look at the way he's got it quiffed and turned up at the side, it's just such a dandy. I think he is a bit of a Victorian dandy. Now, I'm coming up to this part of the painting where there's been this impact, and you can see this discoloured overpaint. It's kind of yellowy green tinge to it, and it's over the top of the crackler original painting. So now I'm going to look at removing this. So I'm just going to show you what I'm removing close up. You can see all those strokes. We know there's been an impact there, so we know this is overpaint, and we know it's going to remove. So I'm going to do a number of passes here, and you can see my swab changing colour. And there you go. I don't know what shape this is going to be. It's always interesting to know exactly what it's going to look like. And yeah, it is quite an impact there, right on his forehead. I can only imagine how that's happened. It probably fell off the wall and hit something, or leant against the corner of a cabinet or cupboard. But yeah, it's quite a nasty tear, that. Looks quite painful, actually. Now, the rest of his face is in such good condition. It's got a real nice fine crackler to it. So whoever painted this portrait knew what they were doing. The brush strokes are all very flat and smooth. It's very measured. It's just really nicely done. Well, that's quite a wallop, isn't it, in his forehead? Quite a nasty damage there. And we know there's at least another 3 impacts on this painting as well. So I'm going to remove the overpaint in the background and the one near his elbow as well, just to show you what that looks like. And then I'm going to continue with the rest of the clean. But his face is beautiful. It's so nicely painted. There's such a really fine crackler there, and the tones are so rich. It is really nicely painted. So let's carry on removing that historical retouching. So this is that large tear on the upper left of the canvas. It's about 5 to 6 inches long, and you can see the ochre colour removing, and there's quite a lot of filled matter there. This is really thickly applied. This is all overpaint to hide that damage down here, and you can see there it's got black pigment and deep red as well removing. So that's all going to need some kind of attention too. It's quite a lot to be filled there as well. Now, the background has the same varnish on that had covered the white areas. So again, it is worth cleaning this painting. The gains aren't massive, but it is cleaner. So the whole background area is going to have the varnish removed too. And as I said, not great gains, but it is going to improve the overall look of the painting. Now, this is interesting. This is like a little bit of a overpainted area on his head or hairline to change the shape as well. So I'm going to address that a little bit later on as well. But in the meantime, it's just lots and lots of very dull, boring background cleaning, removing yellowy brown varnish from a yellowy brown background. Not my favourite thing to do. So here is that impact again. There's that really nasty one. I feel like he needs stitches on there. This is the other one. And this is quite bad as well down here in the under his elbow, the crook of his elbow. So before I apply my barrier varnish, I'm going to restretch him now. So I have to fold the edges over, match the edges of the canvas to the new stretcher, so just gently tease those around, and then I'm going to use some tacks to tack him back together, back on there. Now, I have chatted with some friends of mine who are very knowledgeable in all things painting and fashion, and it was suggested at first glance some of the styling of this portrait could feel quite American, especially from New England around the same kind of time. But when you start really studying the clothing, the colour palette and the technique, everything points more strongly to a British or possibly Northern European origin. There's lots of controlled brushwork, there's some modest elegance to him, there's refined details in his waistcoat and the cravat. So they're all more in line with British provincial portraiture of the 1830s and 40s rather than the more American school, which could be a little bit more, not folky or naive, but it does have a definite different feel to it. So I'm just tidying up the back of the canvas now. I choose to use an animal hide glue to glue those edges down once they've been tidied up. This again is a traditional method, and I just think it looks quite neat and tidy. So once this is all done now, I'm ready to start retouching. I've got quite a little bit of filling to do. Oh, sorry. I found this frame. Now, this frame has been kicking around the studio for possibly a year. It's not particularly period, but I do think it lends itself. There's a little bit of work that's needed. It's going to need cutting down. I'm not sure if the client will like it. They might do. They might want to keep it on there, but I can't put it back in that brown frame that it came in. So I'm going to do a little bit of work on this. I'm going to cut it down to size and tidy it up a little bit just to give him a proper home. And I don't know, it might just elevate him a little bit. So just indulge me with this. So next morning, I carry on doing what I should have been doing, which is getting the canvas ready for its barrier varnish. So I'm just knocking in the stretcher keys and I'm going to secure them with some fishing line or nylon so that, you know, over time these can fall behind the back of the canvas, but with this method they'll stay nice and secure and in place. And I'm going to apply a conservation grade barrier varnish now. So this is going to go over the painting so that any retouching or filling work that I do remains on top of the barrier varnish, not on the original paintwork. So This varnish has got really good light fast properties. It dries quickly, and it'll just allow me to retouch on there, knowing that I'm not fusing any of my retouchings with the original paint. But yeah, he's looking quite dapper now, apart from that wound on his forehead. And the colours are just shining now. He really is coming to life. He's got a real sparkle in his eye. I can't quite work his smile out. I don't know if that's a bit of a confident smile or smirk, but I don't know. I feel like he knows who he is and possibly where he wants to be going in life. That waistcoat's lovely. I love that pattern. And I need to talk a little bit about that winding key on his watch chain as well. That's going to help us date the portrait as well later on. So the barrier varnish has dried, and now I'm going to look at which areas need filling. So by putting him on the vacuum table, it has flattened a lot of the painting. It was pretty flat anyway. Now this large impact does require filling. You can see that some of the old filling has removed slightly. That crack is still quite visible. So I'm going to use my filler here just to go over. I'm going to overfill and then remove. But just feeling this joint, using my fingernail here, there's no indentation. That bond is flat. It doesn't require filling. This one has got a little bit of a dink in it, if you like, or a divot. That will need filling. And then this one as well, you can still see the cracks as well. It's quite ugly. And if you just use the back of your fingernail, it's very, very good at gauging how deep something needs to be filled. So I'm going to fill under his arm, over his shoulder, but I'm going to leave his forehead because that repair is fine. So I'm just going to remove the excess filler here before I get ready to start retouching. It's always easier to overfill and remove the excess. Just got to be careful not to remove too much filler as you're filling again. So I'm using my restoration chips, which are pigments bound in a resin. This takes multiple passes to get correct. So I'll lay down a base coat first. This kind of gets absorbed by the filling material and forms a bit of a seal. And then I can start working in and matching those colours. Flat colours, quite difficult to match. This is pretty much a brown flat ochre. There are layers in here. He may well have scumbled certain parts of this background painting to apply a little bit of texture and interest. There's lots of pigments going on, so it's going to take me a few passes to get this right, but that bottom is looking pretty good now, and when the final coat of varnish comes on, it will just match that correctly with the background and my touched area. Same with this area over his shoulder. There's like a base coat of ochre, and then it's almost like he's scumbled a darker colour over the top, so I'm going to build that up in layers as well. And then this whole area here. So the reason why there's so much paint missing is I think the person who restored it in the past filled and then sanded. So they've sanded the whole paint and ground layer down, and that's why there's so much paint loss. That's the only reason that could have happened. And then they've overpainted over the top. But it was quite a big impact, to be fair. It's going horizontally, it's going vertically. So it does happen a lot with paintings that in the past where they've been filled and then sanded down. It's just one of the processes that they use. So again, I'm going to block this in with a number of different coats and then build up the tones and blend them in as best I can to match. So using a slightly bigger brush here on that larger area. And then that wound to his forehead. I feel like I'm doing surgery here. Again, multiple layers on here. There's like the base coat that's got the crack layer. He's got washes going over the top, and he's dragged pigments through as well. So this will take a while to build that up and get that correct. So lots and lots of tiny little dots. And then this is that correction that I believe the artist has made to get the shape correct. So I'm just going to emphasize that a little bit more and block that in, because I do think this was intentional by the artist. And there he is, pretty much first and a little bit of second pass. Now, when that final top coat of varnish goes in, I'll get a really good idea of how my retouchings have done. But you can see here, once that dries on his jacket and becomes richer, that will disappear into the background, and the same with the two impacts over his shoulder. But I'm really happy with his forehead. That looks great. Now, we can't be certain who painted it. There's no visible signature, but the style is consistent with painters influenced by the likes of James Lonsdale or John Partridge. British artists were known for clean, academic portraiture, often of the middle and upper middle classes. The use of a plain ochre background, the warm earth tones, the subtle modelling of the face, these are all the hallmarks of a provincial British artist working in the shadow of London's portrait scene. Now, I mentioned earlier about the pocket watch and winding key. If you look closely, hanging from his waistcoat is a pocket watch chain, and attached to it is what appears to be a winding key. Before watches were wound by a stem, they were wound with a key inserted either into the back or through the dial at the front. These keys were often beautifully crafted, gold, ivory or enamel, and they were meant to be seen. It's a little symbol of wealth, modernity and good taste. The presence of a visible winding key helps narrow our dates even further, because these became obsolete after about 1855, when a new method of winding clocks and pocket watches was invented. So this is definitely a pre-stem wind, so it's likely no later than the early 1840s. So while we may not know the sitter's name, we may never know the exact artist, we can say this. This is a British portrait painted around 1835 to 45, capturing a young man who wanted to be remembered. Well-groomed, well-dressed, and very aware of how he wished to be seen. It's a time capsule of fashion, technology, and social aspiration, beautifully preserved in oil on canvas. I think it'd be fair to say that this is in the school of or the studio of James Lonsdale. There's lots of similarities in his portraits with this one. But yeah, what a fabulous painting. Here it is now, varnished, fitted up into that frame. You can see his hairline's better, his forehead's repaired. All those colours are really shining through and nice and bright and fresh, and that waistcoat is just so lovely. Really, really pleased with how it's turned out. It really sings. It's such a quality portrait. It just commands your attention. Now, here's the before, how he arrived at the studio looking a little bit worse for wear in that terrible frame, cockled and dirty. And then this is how it leaves the studio, fully cleaned, relined, filled, retouched and revarnished. And he looks magnificent. What a dapper dandy he is. Hope you enjoyed that. That is the Victorian dandy, and what a fabulous painting it is. I've really enjoyed working on this. I know it wasn't as dramatic as some of the other restorations, but look at him now. He looks like the day he was painted. I kid you not. He looks so fresh, and that frame as well just sets it off. I think he looks good. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you've made it this far, thank you very much. I appreciate it. You're in the top 20%, I think, who go all the way to the end, or to this part of the video anyway. Thank you to all my patrons. If you've not been over to Patreon yet, there's loads of exclusive content on there, tutorials, paintings you won't see on YouTube. Thank you, patrons, for supporting the channel. You keep it going. You know what I'm going to say now. Let me show you the weather. Let's do this. It is absolutely glorious out there today. 30 degrees in Manchester. It's unheard of. The flags are cracking, as they say. So hope you have a lovely weekend. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Okay, guys. Bye.